Dr. Plummer, thank you so much for joining us again this year. That was fantastic. We are moving on to our first panel discussion of this year's conference. It's about technology. And technology continues to drive much of our advancement in understanding the game of baseball. Joining us tonight to lead a discussion around baseball tech is Sarris, a staff writer at The Athletic, where he specializes in pitching analytics. Takes the best public analytics findings to players in the clubhouse to get their reactions. He's also been a contributor to Fangraphs, ESPN, MLB.com, Fox Sports, SB Nation, the Hardball Times, and others. And as of this year, a SABR Analytics Conference Research Award winner. Congrats again, Joining the panel are Seth Daniels, Director of Product for Rapsodo, Jacob Howenstein, Biomechanical Engineer at BlastMotion, and Keenan Long, founder of LongBall Labs. We'll put the full bios for all of our panelists in the chat. It's great to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Take it away.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for the award. It's right there next to the polar bear in the background. But thanks everybody for checking in with us, and to our panelists, Jacob, Seth, and Keenan. Just wanted to start off with an easy one for all of you guys. This one should be easy. What does your company do? What do you do? What is it that what is the technology at the base of your company? What is it that you do? Let's start out with Jacob and tell us a little bit about BlastMotion. It's a pretty well-known company, but tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing.
All right, thanks for the intro. So Blast is a hardware, mobile, and cloud-based platform. We have a sensor that goes on the bat, and we capture data on every swing, giving key insights for analysis and application. That's super simple to use. We're using about 85% of the major league organizations, everything from player development to scouting, strength and conditioning, including medical and rehab, like return to play workload type applications. And then we're used all the way down to the youth market. We capture almost 300,000 actions a day, which is super awesome. It's a ton of data that we get to look at. And yeah, that's a little bit about us.
I think of you guys as the widget on the bat, but do you have other sort of widgets? Do you have other ways of capturing data?
So that's definitely the primary one. And it's awesome because it's kind of like the common denominator between all these different environments and other technologies. Like you can always have a sensor on the bat, including in game at minor leagues and a lot of amateur levels. But we do also have other applications, including a mobile-based low-cost launch monitor. You can get just from the computer vision on a phone. You can get exit velocity and launch angle data that's used actually by some of the top college programs for remote training. Those are definitely the big ones. And then a pretty robust cloud that allows that information to integrate with other partners and then also be disseminated to our professional customers in our cloud or our web portal.
Oh, thanks so much. And let's go around the horn then. Keenan, what does LongBall Labs do?
First off, can you hear me,
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
All right. I love that you're the question master for this. I can't think of a better person to be the question master for this panel.
We just for the panel, for people out there, just some background. Keenan and I met at a SABR Analytics Conference. So
yeah, that's why I was going to flip the script on you and ask you a question if you could pencil me in for a virtual beer pretty soon here.
All right.
I got to meet Eno back. I think it was 2018. I went to the SABR Analytics Conference in person. I knew nobody, got introduced to a bunch of awesome people, and now just a few years later, here I am, the founder of LongBall Labs, and we work with major league hitters. Those are our clients, work directly with the hitters, and we basically provide them with an exit velocity boost by examining and analyzing their bats. So we're talking about minute physical differences in the bats that are delivered to the players. So basically, by only swinging the highest performing bats in their inventory, the players stand to gain anywhere between around 1.5 to as much as 3 miles per hour in exit velocity, which everyone on this call knows is no small amount. Roughly at the warning track, you're talking about 6 to 18 feet of batted ball distance, which is huge. So a couple examples from this past season. Mitch Haniger is one of our clients. He had 39 home runs this past year. And 7 of those home runs are what the players affectionately call front row Joes. And those are balls that just barely make it out. And with the data we have on the bats themselves and the players' performance with those bats, we can say that 7 of Mitch's 39 bombs last year were probably would have been flyouts if he was not analyzing his bats and using the absolute highest performing bat. Another example would be Jed Lowry, another client. He had 14 bombs and 3 of those were just barely over the fence. Excuse me, just barely over the fence. So we do all this by using proprietary lab devices. And again, we're measuring bats that are produced by the same company on the same day to the same spec and finding out how these small differences play out for the player. And we've done hundreds of bats through the lab, and it's very clear without a doubt that no 2 bats really perform the same. So our mission is to quantify this inefficiency, correct it, and get that performance back to the player who it's rightfully their performance in the first place. So that's where we live.
Does it have to be, do you have large equipment? Does it have to, they have to send you the bats? Is it, a whole process? Do you have a bat cave?
We do have a bat cave.
Or can you do this on the road in a way that doesn't require them to send you the bats?
Yes, at first we had a very large lab that was not mobile, but once we saw how different the bats were and how the performance opportunities, how big they were, we built new devices, and now we have a mobile lab that can go anywhere. And we also have a lab that we built in Arizona.
That's a key question for our next panelist. Seth at Rapsodo, I think one of the key aspects of your tech is how easy it is to set up, how mobile it is. So tell us a little bit about Rapsodo.
Sure. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for being here and moderating for us. In general, we're a sports tech company that really focuses on camera and radar-based technology. So our ability to kind of compare and combine the two is really our bread and butter. We focus primarily right now, as we speak here today, on the diamond sports, so baseball and softball market, and then also golf, where we have a personal launch monitor that does a similar sort of activity than what we do there. So really, it's tracking ball flight and then being able to kind of combine that and put that into metrics that players and coaches can use and evaluate, ideally in real time. And then also, if you have a front office that's able and capable of kind of taking that in and drawing larger conclusions, taking that in and dealing with on the cloud from an API standpoint. So really, what we kind of made our bread and butter on is player development, player evaluation, that side of things. And so our goal is really to kind of help players get better and become the best version of what they can do. And hopefully the tech kind of helps do that.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about this. So our next round here will be about what this looks like in a coaching environment, what this looks like in practice. So with the Rapsodo setup, how do you see? Have you seen this sort of live with some players? Could you tell us a little bit about how the Rapsodo improves the coaching process, and what sort of data is coming off of your technology that and how it's used to actually help players improve?
Yeah, definitely. So specifically for this, we'll just touch on like the hitting and pitching side of thing. I think the biggest, example I can even pull from is just when we were down meeting with teams 4 to 5, maybe even 6 years ago, kind of making our first rounds. And teams had access to the data, but I don't know if the actual coaches in real time had access to see, okay, this is the pitch, here's the results. How can we make those improvements happen on a case-by-case basis? We were down meeting with the team and just so happened to have the whole pitching staff, minor league, Major League all around, just kind of learning about what the technology was, how to use it. And you could see the app, they brought out 2 minor league pitchers, both through. One guy had incredible spin efficiency. So for that, just meaning he stayed behind the ball really well. We're talking upper 90s, really consistent. He had okay stuff, but just in general, the way he was able to get a lot of useful spin out of it was great. The other guy got up and had kind of electric stuff, but he was cutting the ball big time. Just so happened the coaches we were around didn't speak any Spanish. This guy didn't speak any English. So there's a little bit of a barrier there, but they had the visual in the application. So they were able to show the guy and just kind of say, try to rotate your hand and get behind it and do this, and literally using verbal cues in the app. And the dude went from like 72 up to like 88, 89, and he picked up 3 to 4 inches more spin-induced break that kind of happened there. So I think in the most simple way, it's just the ability to understand in real time. That guy didn't do anything better from, more RPMs, throw the ball harder. It was all his raw stuff that he had access to, but he was able to use more of it and get that out of it. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things on the pitching side. Pitch design is obviously that term that gets thrown around a lot, but in reality, it's also just a coach's tool to say the things that you're seeing with your eye, being able to visually show. I think that same trend happens on the hitting side. A lot of hitting happens in a cage. It's amazing how many professional hitters, hopefully less today, but still would be able to be in a cage, see a ball hit at a certain launch angle and think, okay, that ball's out of here. And then realize, oh, that's more like 10 to 12 degrees, not the 25 degrees maybe the guy's looking for. So that instant visual kind of feedback and allowing them to understand and make better adjustments and be repeatable, I think, in the process are two of the biggest.
It's a fascinating example because, there's not too much barrier to entry there, you use the pictures to get the stuff across, and you didn't have to use a lot of jargon or language. I mean, it's kind of amazing. You've got to cross the language barrier there. Do you focus on that aspect of your technology ever, the helping communicate, is there sort of an explanation process where you're kind of explaining some of your stats, or do you try to, show your stats in sometimes in like simple green, red, yellow, like to kind of get across? Because your tech is going to be used all the way from like the majors to, maybe youth ball. And Definitely. So the coaches that come to it will have different backgrounds in terms of what they know. So how do you sort of make it easier and more accessible to people?
Yeah, it's interesting at the MLB level, we really almost have like two different customers that we serve. One in the front office that just wants everything. Any data point you can throw my way, they're excited to look at it and want the full CSV. And then you have the guys that are actually doing the baseball ops that are really trying to use this in real time. They don't care about the 30, files that are in there. They just want to know, what am I looking at? And it breaks down to a couple key data points. It kind of depends on the guy and what they're looking for, but in general, that's kind of where they're at. We came out, with the certification courses because we realized when we started this about 7 years ago, it was just so clear. The amount of people that really understood the data was pretty low. The amount of people that wanted the data was really high. And we had to figure out a way, how do we educate along with selling? We sort of have sold into that part of the market now that really was hungry and wanted it. And now as we continue to go downstream, we're realizing we're sort of starting back over again as we get into the high school and softball market. Exactly. There is no MLB in softball, right? So that data has not been sort of popularized at that level to be pushed down. So it is a little bit of a bigger gap there. And there are a few years behind with what we've been doing there. So we find ourselves having to kind of go backwards and recreate some of these screens that are just a little bit easier to kind of see and understand. But yeah, definitely visually based is big time.
Right. You have some different sort of interfaces, like some customizable screens of like what they can see. So you can kind of like have a few different easier views. Screen.
Some are video, some is video based, so you can look and see immediately what happened versus what the actual data was. Because, from a lot of times kids these days are such visual learners. If they can see the ball flight and also see the video, pair those things together, it's really easy to make mechanical adjustments. Some are just more of a ball flight screen where you can see kind of the ball flight, but it's a little bit more trimmed down data. So if somebody just wanted to look at a few data points, and then there's more of the larger kind of data screen that kind of gives everything that you can see on that, and coaches can kind of pick and choose which one may be best for them.
Yeah, I find this the instant feedback super useful in the coaching environment, and giving it in a way that's digestible, I think, is important. BlastMotion on the Jacob on the you mentioned there was a kind of I'm sorry, it's a competitor, but it's like a hit tracks thing, kind of like, right? Like it sort of tells you, it's like a video screen that kind of tells you where that ball would have gone. Like if you're in a hitting cage environment, maybe was that one of the things you were just describing, sort of like a visualization of where that ball might have gone? Was that one of your products, Jacob? Did I miss that?
So yeah, so we have a mobile app. So it's just part of our mobile app where it's just Blast Vision, and it's great because it's free and it's part of our app that you can, in your batting cage, in your garage as a youth kid, getting X velocity and launch angle. It's certainly different than higher end camera systems or launch monitors like Rapsodo or what's involved in a stadium. But like from just having no information to having some really great information, it's a big step. And that's a big part of, being able to democratize the access to a lot of this stuff and getting the instant feedback Like I said, one of the great aspects of our product is you can always have a sensor on the bat.
Right.
And including in game at the minor leagues and a lot of amateur leagues. So if you're working on specific things and trying to create the launch parameters or the results you want to have on the field, we can measure that in practice and the things you're working on with your coaches, and in game. And we've seen professionals like Otani use it on the field before the game. It's used throughout the minor leagues. It's embedded in the bats. Like it's a big part that then can be utilized to get instant feedback and metrics really anywhere, and then integrate into all the other aspects of technology and the systems and the results that you're trying to create.
Well, speak to the accessibility part a little bit, though. One of the things that I see with hitters when they're training is they'll look back at the screen, like they're in the cage, they hit the ball, they'll see there's always like, they'll have the BlastMotion, they'll know the exit velocity, but they want to see the sort of visualization of the like, oh, I hit a homer. They still want that visual feedback of, oh, that was a homer, oh, that was a single, or whatever it was. Do you have any sort of translation in that where it's like, oh, that went 380, that would have gone 380, feet, or, do you have, is there some sort of thing that gives it, that's not just exit velocity and launch angle, that's some sort of approximation of what the hit might have been?
Yeah, we have estimated distance, and, the blast vision piece is just, a very small part of the metrics that we give. But, there's been a lot of great research that has shown the relationship between bat speed and attack angle and the exit velocity and the launch angles that you're trying to create. And so that's a big part of it too. Like, guys love to see their bat speed. They love to see their rotational acceleration, what's their plane. It's a big part about the feedback loop, and including, not just, from an analytics perspective, but also for the athlete and understanding the real versus feel versus what your coach sees, talking like what Seth said about, you immediately have that quantifiable common language that then helps everybody get on the same page. You said we capture in game and training, so what your swing feels like and what the data says like it is in the batting practice on the field before the game. And then, in a lot of levels, we can also get that in game to see, hey, are you actually producing the swing you're trying to produce when it counts?
Yeah, that's sort of amazing. I wonder, you have some maybe affiliate ball, some minor league ball where they're wearing it.
So it's used throughout the minor leagues. Anything other than a 40-man on the field, it's used, and it's used.
But during games?
Yeah, absolutely. It's used almost by every one of our major league customers uses it in game, because it's so critical for them, and they can use it passively. Like I said, it's embedded in the bat. We actually have it in the knob. This is a composite bat with Rawlings,
right?
So it's seamless.
Cool.
It's almost invisible to the athlete, and then they can look at that, and it's a big part of their analytics process and their coaching process and getting that information on their whole development through the minor league system.
I think Keenan with LongBall, it's not immediately obvious that it's part of a coaching process, but I do remember from our conversations in the past that it's not always just measuring in the lab. There is a component of, we are going to tell you some specs. We're going to send them back to you, or we're going to, maybe with the mobile lab, we're going to be there with you and do some controlled swings, so that you kind of get an idea of the interaction between the specs that you've got, like we're talking about here, these different specs and the outcome. So, how to speak a little bit about that secondary process. Sure. Once you've measured in the lab, this sort of secondary process of sending it to them and getting them to take swings with the different ones you've measured and get an idea of how, the different measurements interact with what they want out of their bat.
Yes, totally. And it honestly grew out of a need to show the player that their bats are performing differently. And it also grew out of a need to show them that we know what we're talking about. So we came out of nowhere, and who is this guy? He's going to measure your bats. What is that all about? We've done a lot of work working with players this offseason. The lockout helped actually a little bit extend the offseason, so we could get more work in with the players. So what happens is, after we analyze the bats in the lab, we ship them back to the player, and they're marked. And we say, all right, player, swing this bat and swing this bat. And there's a very strict protocol that we follow. It's very interesting telling a MLB All-Star exactly what to do, and they listen. It was kind of cool, but they follow the protocol. Strict adherence to the scientific method, so that we can really be confident in our results. And then what comes out is, 2 bats that to the player looked and felt the same before the test. Then as they see the Rapsodo data, as they see the exit velocities throughout the test, they kind of get a feeling for it. And then once we do the analysis, statistical analysis on the data after the test, it's very clear. Okay, oh my gosh, bat A hit the ball 2.3 miles an hour harder than bat B. And getting the player to have that experience in the cage with their own bat, we learned very quickly we had to create that crystallizing moment. Otherwise, who the heck is LongBall Labs? And why would I trust them with the one thing that is the most important thing for my career, the most important physical object in my career? And so we learned it wasn't enough to show a player a graph or to show them what we were able to accomplish with another player. We had to recreate this experience with every single player. So yes, there's a bit of an in-cage moment that needs to happen. As far as working with coaches, I think, right now we work directly with players and we work through their agents, but I think this is would be a great technology to use for coaches, mainly because there's no learning curve. It's completely hands-off. So from the coach's perspective, you're doing nothing different with the player. And then from the player's perspective, they're doing nothing different either. Hitting is hard enough as it is. We understand that, and we are trying to get the heck out of the way. So we measure the bats, we provide the data, which bats to swing and which not to, and we're just completely hands-off with respect to that. I also wanted to comment on Seth's story, which blew me away. That's freaking awesome. The story about using the info display to break the language barrier. I mean, all of us tech people, we know that math is a universal language, but just a big kudos to your team for being able to build, this is an info display win. There should be a trophy involved for the people who came up with this for this interface.
I'll pass that along to the guys that helped create it. They'll appreciate it. It was a big moment. It was cool. It was sort of one of those aha moments. I remember we had even our GM was traveling with me, but he doesn't usually go out to meet with the teams. It's usually something that I and a couple of the guys do. And he was there and he was like, okay, I kind of see what we're doing here. And I see the opportunity. That was kind of early on, and more you just continue to see some of that along the way. That was just a cool moment with everybody around.
Yeah. Oh, one last question for Keenan on this subject a little bit. Is there a chance that, some of the bats are, so you kind of, in the end, there's like a one number thing. It's like a plus EV, like plus exit velocity number. But, there's kind of 2 ways to get there, or a couple of different ways to get to exit velocity in terms of, bat speed, like rotational bat speed. And so you could have a bat that augments your speed, or you could have a bat that has a little bit more of a MOI, like a little bit like a further, like a bigger sweeter spot, or like a further away sweeter spot that was like better for exit velocity. So how do you manage that? Is that something that comes up, or is that just something that comes through in keeping the swings the same? And so therefore you've handled that variable, and so therefore it's just fitting the bat to that swing.
I think what you're hitting on is the classical optimization problem. It's an optimization problem because we're optimizing for more than just one thing. Granted, everyone wants the best exit velocity, but there are other factors in hitting, and there are many factors that contribute to the exit velocity, not just the bat and its physical characteristics. And so what we've learned is to work with the players at the very beginning to tell them, we are optimizing for X. Does that match with your approach at the plate? And the other thing is that I think you're kind of hitting on is at the end of the process, there is wiggle room. And we did have players, Jed was a great example. He had basically like a bat lineup card. So he knew what bat he could change to based on the minute differences from one bat to the next. So an easy example is like dog days of summer, you dive and you hurt your wrist a little bit and it's a little bit sore, and maybe you're fouling off fastballs that you normally don't. There are adjustments you can make, swinging the same spec, the same turning model, but just a slightly different bat that's in your inventory that could help you turn that foul tip into a batted ball.
Theoretically, somewhere along, the bat that made it easier to turn, so it made it like, maybe higher bat speed, but not as good, not as much weight in the barrel. I mean, you're measuring sort of like relative densities along the barrel. So
yeah, and it's been fun to keep up with the players as the season progresses, because they're learning things. They're continuing the optimization problem. As you know, I mean, as a baseball player, you get more and more in touch with your swing throughout the season. And that the minute changes they make from there are really cool to follow up with. And it really educates the process. It's an iterative process for us. It's been a lot of fun.
What would you do? What's next for you? We're gonna turn this around the horn, but we'll start with Keenan this time. But what would you what's if you pie in the sky, would you be working with Blast? Would you be working with a bat manufacturer? Like, would you who could you how would you expand this, and how would you, other than just have more clients?
Well, yes, we're looking to work with everyone, and we wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Blast and if it wasn't for Rapsodo. We wouldn't be able to quantify these things. I think the immediate what's next for us is continuing to grow the number of players we work with. And so I want to, if it's okay, take a chance to share some of the big signings we've had recently. I haven't shared this with anyone, so I figured this would be a good venue to do so. We're re-upping the guys we had last year. So Mitch Haniger, Jed Lowry, Eric Sogard, and a handful of minor league guys. But there's a couple new partnerships. And I thought it would be fun, since we have the smartest baseball people in the world in one place. And if you're interested in getting a free LongBall Lab shirt, I'm going to ask a question I'm going to give you hints about the player, and whoever can say it first, if you want a shirt, I'll send you a shirt. Does that sound good?
Is that in the chat, or how are people going
in the
to...
question section? I see there's a lot of people throwing questions in there.
Oh, there's a bunch of questions. Okay, well, maybe we got
8 questions. All right, so I'll be very quick.
Go ahead in the question.
I think this will be fun. So we got this guy is a former Rookie of the Year, so that's a big hint. The next hint will give him away. I think he's also a home run derby champ. If anyone's jumping into this. All right, Mark Tony, hit me up. You were right. It's Pete Alonso. I was also going to say he's a known member of the polar bear community.
That would have really.
So Mark Tony is the winner of that one. Hit me up. Oh, okay, I got 2 more. The hints are going to get a little bit harder. This guy hit 27 bombs last year, and that put him over 100 homers for the year. He's a 2019 All-Star, and he also swings a gigantic bat and is a huge person. Wow, there's so many guesses. Look at this. Oh my gosh, I can barely scroll through all these. I'm not seeing it yet. Oh, Brandon Alvino is correct. It's Josh Bell. Bell
nice.
Of the Washington Nationals. So hit me up and get you a free shirt. Okay, one more. This one's going to be really hard. I'll be surprised if anyone gets this, because I made really bad hints for it. Okay, he's a former first rounder, and he signed a major league contract, I think the day of the lockout starting. There was no press release, but he signed a major league contract. And let's see, I want to make sure I scroll right. And he's a Brewer.
I've got to guess, I guess.
You guys can guess if you want. Free shirts for everyone. We'll go Oprah style.
Is it Andrew McCutchen?
Not Andrew McCutchen. All right, we'll get 5 more seconds. It's Jace Peterson.
Jace Peterson.
So he's kind of my pick to click this year. Super excited about that. So, I mean, we'll be announcing more throughout the next couple of weeks, but I thought this was a good chance to do that. And just excited. That's what's next for us. What we're doing now, QCing the bats, just phase 1 of like a much bigger plan. But I wanted to just share some of the growth we've had as of late.
All right. So Seth, what's next for Rapsodo? What are you guys developing? An even smaller thing, something I can put in my pocket and then tell me my spin rate, or
yeah, for golf we have that, if you're interested.
That's right.
No, so we have a few new things coming out. So we've been pretty busy. So we have a new kind of combined unit. We call it the Pro 3.0. It's coming out. Does hitting and pitching both combined. A lot of new and exciting opportunities for additional measurements. It's a stereo camera, cameras facing both ways, radar facing both ways. That all fits in there in a smaller, more compact, kind of all put in one unit and system. So you'll see those sprinkled around. Spring training, those are going to launch here probably the next, maybe midway through the year for the amateur side. So that's exciting.
Here's one question from Dork. You guys do have a directly measured spin axis information, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's our big kind of differentiation. We do give the 3 kind of components that make up that. Yeah, basically how it works in 10 seconds, we take photos of the ball, and that's triggered from the radar. Radar tells us when to take photos. We then know kind of points in space of where we do it, and every photo then we optimize into the ball, understand the seams, and then we, through a deep learning model, understand that.
Can you break that into transverse? Like, can you break it into components?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we
Ooh.
give the full 9-parameter fit with the accelerations for spin and velocity along the full ball flight. And then this one, obviously sitting in the middle facing both ways, now we get a full complete ball flight that tells us that, and along with a stereo camera looking at home plate. So from a strike zone and everything, it's just a, it's called a pro for a reason. So we're pretty excited about that
Oh,
one.
you could tell me a little bit about late break.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd like to know a little bit more about late break, if it exists or not. Now you got
and
full
we have
flight
plans
of the ball.
Adding in seam orientation as well. So then you can understand what the seam orientation did to the expected break on spin induced versus actual trajectory break. So that's exciting. That'll be added in there. We also are now in the process. We have a few of them across the country already installed, but we're coming out with an in-game unit as well. That's going to do off the field kind of data measurement for in-game capturing, which is really great. We have one down in Arizona now. Florida's coming in about a week, and a couple more north where we're at around the area. So that'll come out probably later this year.
That's one of the trickier things about Rapsodo is just setting it up, like where you set it up, right? Like it's you either have to have it on the field, on the ground, or behind home plate in sort of an obtrusive way for gameplay. I mean, like
exactly. And it's used a lot on lives, and it's used in the sort of scrimmage environments, but to do real gameplay, we need to be off the field. So it's actually easier for us because we have a dual radar, dual stereo camera system that's going to allow us to get a full complete picture of the ball. So we're pretty excited. That guy's going to come out second half of the year. I also saw a question. I can go ahead and bang this one out while we're here, that somebody had come in on talking about the kinematics. So we have an iPad point and shoot kind of kinematics app that's going to be added into our existing Rapsodo Diamond app. So when you're pitching, you can set up about 8 feet away from the pitcher. The guy can throw it in real time in the app. Basically, when you throw the ball, when you get the pitching data, you're also going to get kinematic data on that. So that's going to start with kinematic sequence, tell you if you're in sequence or not, and then also the time interval in between each one of those, because we know that there's some optimization that can be done there from a velocity standpoint. More studies being done there, but some exciting stuff that'll come out here in the next couple weeks. But it's and that'll keep going into hitting and other avenues as well.
I'd like to come work for you. Jacob, tell me some more about what's coming down the pipe with you guys.
Yeah, so one of the really cool things about working with a lot of these major league teams for several years now is we get a lot of their feedback and look into their systems, and they a lot of times tell us what they're looking for. And a big one of that was a why behind a lot of these metrics. And more advanced information with, like I said, just having a sensor on the bat and going swinging and taking out a lot of the overhead that's involved with cleaning and processing motion capture data typically. And so something a lot of people might not know is on our pro side, we have an API that delivers, every type of metric you want to have on the bat, whether trajectory or, some advanced biomechanics modeling. And so one of those asks was can we get sequencing information, and particularly in game and other things with just the sensor on the bat. And so that's part of one of the things we're releasing any day now.
So it's almost profile. Like the KVS sort of thing with like the sort of 1, 2, 3, like sort of, what the sequencing of the swing.
Yeah. So, it's one sensor on the bat, so we can't have every segment, right, but we can give you some really high level and infer a lot of that information. So the goal in a lot of cases is to give about 80% of that information and the insights from some of these more involved or more comprehensive systems or more installed, but so we can try to give 80% of the benefit with the same easy, seamless workflow and deliver that to the user. So we can infer your relative bat versus body rotation and how you sequence between the two based on your trajectory, patterns of rotation and acceleration. And then we also have what we call our rotational acceleration profile. So it's really, it directly measures the force and acceleration you're applying to the bat throughout the swing. So it really tells you how you were able to produce that swing and not just what happened, and including some like physical characteristics, like essentially it's like your rotational rate of force development. So, from a scouting perspective, we can start to infer a lot of their physical characteristics that we may not have otherwise had access to before. And so, that's a big part. And then we're also looking to continue to add to like the seamlessness of the solution. So like I said, we work with 12 OEMs right now on the big league side, including, Rawlings, Louisville, Dovetail, a lot of the, big wood bat manufacturers. We have a deal with Rawlings to bring that to the amateur side and some of their big composite bats down market. So that's a big effort. And then we have a tremendous cloud infrastructure that we're continuing to build out that is designed to integrate with partners and deliver data in new and powerful ways. Talk about the opportunity to look at swing metrics and what you're doing in the process to then produce the results from like a Rapsodo or all these other technologies, whether it's a camera system on the field. Like we can make that connection and connect the entire picture to really like have the whole view, and then add in the equipment side with what Keenan's working on. Like I said, we can be that common denominator, facilitate and be a part of all the different pieces that then can bring it together. Because like you said, you can all have a sensor on the back. And then, we are looking at a multi-sensor solution. So, we know what we can do with one sensor and we can provide a lot of information, but hey, let's see what we can do with another one that we might be able to throw on. If we can have the same easy workflow and provide a whole nother level of insights, like that's tremendous to the user.
Have you looked at sensors in batting gloves or in, the pitching glove, like in a glove for fielders or for pitchers or, in other places?
We definitely looked at sensors just about everywhere and in all sorts of applications. Like I said, our main goal is to give you guys the most information without, with as least work as possible, and try to make it seamless and an easy part of your workflow. And so, the bat makes a lot of sense. It's certainly on equipment. But can we expand that and bring it to a lot of different aspects, strength and conditioning side, and really bridge that gap of off the field to on the field? Like it's stuff that we're always looking at and continue to work on behind the scenes.
One of the obstacles for me in my research is what data I have available to me and what data baseball will let me see. Do you run into certain walls the same way? You say you have team partners, but you're trying to collaborate with different companies, have different goals, and the different shareholders and different bottom lines that they're trying to protect. So how does that? What are the obstacles you see in your industry in terms of, or what are the things that you have had to overcome or need to overcome?
So from like a data sharing side, we have partnerships with a lot of major league organizations, and obviously their privacy and not publicizing that information is very important for a lot of their players and prospects and throughout the organization, because a lot of prospect data would be very valuable to other people. But so that's certainly exclusive to them, but we have the ability to aggregate all of that data into level of play averages. So we know what a major league baseball player looks like, all the way down to, different levels of minor leagues, high school, elite showcase data, and down. So that's a great way that we're able to strike a balance between keeping your privacy, but also giving you, really good information. That's something that they've certainly asked for, is we want to know how our players stack up against everybody else. And that's even something we provide to our consumer customers as well. Like, what does a high school player look like? How do I stack up against all the other kids who are trying to get recruited?
That's huge.
I think
feedback everybody wants to know. What does that mean? How does that mean? How good does that make me? What grade do I get?
Totally. And I think the other, the big challenge we've seen over the last few years is just the common language aspect of just, whether it's metrics that one person calls it versus the other, even, just aspects of the swing. Every coach has their own language. And so in trying to kind of create a common language, like I said, some of that's just quantifying aspects. And then now we at least know, like, here's what we measure, here's what you see, here's what I see, here's what the data sees.
Isn't that true even for bat speed? Because there's different bat speeds, right? There's sort of like, what is it, like barrel speed or like near the hand? Like there's different speeds, and people report different, like different technologies report different bat speeds, right? Like differently measured bat speeds.
Totally. And that's like, methods certainly matter. And,
right.
Is
one better than the other?
So we use one that's been commonly used in research. Yeah, I mean, we use it at the sweet spot, because that's the part you hit with the ball, right?
Yeah.
So like, that's the part I want to make moving fast. It's going to relate to your exit velocity and all the things other people are looking at. But so to that point, I think the biggest thing is we try to be transparent with how we do that, and show how we do it. Because like you said, there's different ways, and certain ways are different than others. But the biggest thing is if you understand that and we communicate that,
right. And the coach and some coaches will want to know, hand speed versus bat speed as well. And
totally. And we're agnostic to swing styles. Like that's a big thing for us, is we're not trying to tell you the best way to swing. We just give you the best information and the most accurate information. That's a big tenet for us. And then, educate you on it we have a certification training center to try to help you guys apply with what you guys think is important. And, to help whatever you guys need to help your athletes or your hitters hit the best. And so that's a big thing. And we're continuing to work on that with reporting and better ways to continue to communicate that information. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is just being, agnostic, objective information. Sorry about that. That then gives you the information you need to help your hitters.
Keenan, I was really surprised by this. I know when, I wrote the story about LongBall Labs that you have run into some noise, like you have had some pushback, and I'm sort of surprised by that, because if I ran a team, I'd be like, hey, what is this guy doing? Like, I want all of our bats measured. I want all of our guys to know what's going on here. Is it just because you think they want to do it themselves, or do they think you're just a kook? Like, what is this guy talking about?
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I don't know. It all comes down to some, the bats are different. Some help a little, some hurt a little. That little is the difference between winning and losing sometimes. And yes, we did run into a few situations where working directly with players, and then there's sort of a block towards the data being shared. And so that experience, I'm glad you asked about it, because I wanted to ask Jacob and Seth about this. The whole concept or the discussion around data ownership is something we've been talking about for a long time, and going to these conferences, it seems like we talk about it, but I never really learned yet who owns the data, and if there has been any closure to that conversation. There's two very clear arguments.
The player
that
versus the
sense.
team.
Yeah, the team owns the devices that collect the data, so they own the data. That's an argument. The other argument being the player's the one creating the data. They should at least have access to it. And in situations that I've seen with clients, they're prevented access from data that's been collected via Rapsodo, via BlastMotion. And so I'm curious what you guys see in that field, or at least what you're allowed to talk about here in this venue. Has there been any movement in that debate or closure from what you guys see?
Yeah, we try to be pretty consistent with ours, and it's split right down the middle, whether you're amateur or pro team. We take a very similar approach. On the pro side of what Jacob was talking about earlier, that obviously that's their data, they own it, they pay a premium for that data, that's theirs. That sort of anonymity is really important, so we make sure it's there. We use that data on an aggregated level for us to train models and etc., but that's not something that ever goes out publicly, so that's really important. On the amateur side, it's we own the data as Rapsodo, but from an access standpoint, the players always have that. So there's a free app that they can do, again, similar to what Jacob was mentioning, the Diamond app, that they can log in and see the data that's available to them after a session and whatnot. Same thing with the coach, that he has access to for his historical data points is going to be there. So that's kind of an important piece to make sure. I think more and more, the ability for the players to kind of, they're seeking ownership, they're seeking knowledge. And, we talk to coaches, and that's one of the biggest differences I think that they see is the amount of knowledge that these kids are coming up with, whatever age group, they're more knowledgeable than that, the previous age group that was before them, just because they've been kind of bred in this stuff and know their numbers and know that data. I think that can help to a certain point. In some part, it's also just there's some fundamentals that need to be in there, and we try to toe that line, I think, pretty well. But that's a big piece, is that I know that the amount of knowledge at younger age groups is growing pretty tremendously.
Yeah, just to echo that, as far as the legal side aside, I think a lot of these players are asking for more exposure to it, and having the ability to access and know what it is and what it means. And especially when you start to see it become more of like, hey, like I have this sensor, can you tell me about it? And especially depending on their background, they might be exposed to it for the first time at an organization, and there's a lot of different philosophies and how they integrate that into their system. But we've seen a lot of great stories about players and even organizations together working and having, taking dual ownership of that with their careers and the success it's brought. And then, down market with, our web services, players can download a CSV file with every swing they ever take, and, do all sorts of things they want to look at with, and that's the same with the college market as well. So
is there a line that I'm detecting here, though? Like, is there a chance that a pro player couldn't log on to your app and get his own data?
For sure,
So,
on our side, yeah.
oh, yeah.
So
it
there's
just depends on the team.
always a direct line for a pro player to get his own data.
It depends who owns that device and who's collecting it. If that's part of the organization's team, they have full command on who gets access. And so I
Right.
think legally they're supposed to share that, I think, inside of that, but that's not up to us. That's up to them, and how they sort of
So
disseminate that.
that's where it gets.
Yeah, and we know, I mean, there's certain organizations, the ones you could probably guess, that do allow access, and certain organizations that don't allow any access, and it's kind of, at that point it's their call. I will say though, in the past, especially through COVID, we have hundreds of players that purchase from us individually, that train, in the off season. You think about our product, it is so player development driven, and a lot of that player development happens in the off season before they show up. And so there's more and more teams and players that are looking for that sort of coaching within that. And I wouldn't say every organization, but it's fun to see the ones that are kind of doing that, and they're creating bridges between the two different accounts so that they can provide that sort of, at least development feedback, say this is what we want you to work on, and they can kind of see the progress inside of that. Not that it's direct communication, but just to be able to see and monitor. And sometimes players are like, they'll know I don't want them to get access to this, and it kind of goes both ways. And some guys are like, no, I'd love for them to see it. So it's kind of, up to every individual person at that point.
Yeah, I would say I've never heard of a case where a player's asked for it, at least from our solution, and not been granted access.
Right.
It's like, if you
that
ask,
may be like legal. I think, Jake, I think that may be part of the collective bargaining agreement that they need to see.
I'm not sure from the legal standpoint.
See,
but like,
they probably would have asked their team first.
Well, yeah, I'm just that's not even through us. I'm just saying, like, I've never heard of a case where a player was like to his organization, like, hey, I would love to see my data, and they're like, no. It's more of, if anytime the communication's less, it's almost always because they're trying to manage the relationship and how much data and information a player gets, more from like not an overwhelm standpoint. So usually it's from all the best intentions. I'm not trying to overwhelm players, but or mess with their head or anything like that. But a lot of players ask for it, and it's a big part, and they're having meetings with their coaches on this stuff. So like I said, I've never heard of an organization saying, no, you can't see this. And we have the same stuff where especially during COVID, a lot of players were getting sensors straight from us for the off season to make sure that they're able to keep training and have that data.
Yeah, I've heard of something. I've seen it similarly in the clubhouse, that the younger players coming up now speak my language, speak our language, speak the language of data and tech, want to know this stuff, and are asking for it, would be more likely to own a BlastMotion, be more likely to measure their bats, and just see this as an opportunity, not kind of something that's foisted on them, right? They were probably at they showed themselves on the travel ball circuit, or they went to places where there was a Rapsodo, or they their exit velocity, their bat speed was recorded, and they had to impress scouts with all that. So they're just sort of steeped in that knowledge, and they're coming up. But I do see, and you guys have touched on this, each of you in different ways, but I do see a little bit of a sea change coming with biomechanics. Seth, you mentioned that you've got sort of a kinematics bit that's enabled on your newest devices, and Jacob, you mentioned that you're trying to kind of merge your data with some of the biomechanics data, and so I guess my question is, Hawkeye, the big thing about Hawkeye is that it's now doing sort of markerless motion capture on the big league level. It's going to bring in all this information about how the best players in the world, how their limbs move, and stuff that we didn't have before. And teams are just sort of sorting through it right now. We're at the very beginning of it, but I wonder if you could just dream maybe even further than you have so far, about how this could change baseball, how this could change your products, how this could change the way people train. Keenan, I wonder, is there a way to involve biomechanics in sort of that link between, like, could you maybe at some point say, like, hey, you're like 6'5", your hips move like this is your model?
Yeah, a resounding yes to having access to motion capture data. In the past year, we've had 3 what I consider holy crap moments looking at data, And I think the fourth one is going to come from this data, from the biomechanics data, from the motion capture. So the first holy crap moment was from Rapsodo. So props to Seth and team for having that. By the way, Seth and I used to compete, used to battle it out in college. We were college.
Nice.
Yeah, a couple D3 dudes.
So this first
Was
holy
that a
crap,
catcher and a pitcher?
Well,
I'm a catcher.
technically,
Yeah.
yes, and I was a pitcher, but yeah, different teams.
Yeah, right,
but we
right.
played in the same college conference back
That's fun.
in Indiana.
Yep. So this first holy crap moment was from Rapsodo data, and we were like, holy crap, the bats that look and feel the same are producing different exit velocities. We also used BlastMotion, so props to the BlastMotion team. And we're looking at the blast data, and the second holy crap moment was, oh my gosh, the swing speeds aren't the same. The bats look the same. The player can't tell the difference, and they're actually swinging it differently. So the implications were, I mean, you're talking about timing. I mean, the implications are massive. And then from that, we went back to the blast data to see how it was affecting contact quality, and we saw a major change. The third holy crap moment was the spin rates. Spin rate isn't perfect at telling you contact quality, but if they're far enough apart, you can ascertain that contact quality is not consistent. And so that was our third holy crap moment, was like, man, he's swinging bat. The batted ball spin rate on bat A is like way different than this other bat. What's going on? And so I think the fourth holy crap moment will that I want to test, and I'm super excited about these biomechanics modules that you guys are putting in your technology, is to test out, are these bats variable enough to affect the kinematic sequencing? Based on the first three holy crap moments, I think the answer is yes, but I'm dying to test it out. I'm excited to run those tests. And I think that analysis could then lead to a bunch of other holy crap moments, which are all good. These are holy crap moment is a good thing, because that means there's a chance to convert that into a performance advantage for the athlete.
Seth, how do you see it changing? I mean, you already sort of told us a little bit about what that might be, but is it a little bit more about then bringing that power to the people, and now, you know, maybe better health outcomes, maybe, you know, maybe more velocity? Is it possible?
Yeah, you know, we'll see. I'm sure everybody would say yes on that one, but yeah, I think all the above on that. I think the more that we can understand a lot of what we provide is kind of the effect and the outcome, and with a lot of that, you can kind of do it. And Jacob mentioned earlier, people draw conclusions from bad data versus bad ball data, because you do see the launch angle, you see the spin rates like Keenan just mentioned on our tech, and then you can kind of understand and then bake that backwards. But understanding the mechanics of what drove that, I think are really important, especially because each individual is so, you know, individualistic in how they perform that. So they all have different levers and lengths and, you know, grips and etc. So if we can kind of bake that backwards and understand what actually caused the ball to spin that way, what caused the, you know, the ball to come out of your hand like that, and what we did and how do we repeat that process, to me, I think it's just getting a more complete picture. And ideally, the more information that the coach can get, then he should be able to kind of prescribe that back to the player in a way that he can kind of understand and hopefully repeat.
You know, one of the things I think is really interesting about the future of biomechanics research that hasn't really been, at least not been out in the public as much, is that link between certain biomechanics, certain deliveries, and outcomes. You know, I think we've focused a lot on velocity and health, but, you know, you could tell us a little bit more about deception. If you've got, you know, especially if you've got a BlastMotion sensor and the Rapsodo going, you could start to say a lot about, maybe you can even start to break down that speed into components, the bat speed into components, and say, whoa, people that have this sort of delivery, have this sort of layback in their arm, you can actually see the bat slows down because the batter doesn't know what's coming, or it can't time it right. So, you know, once we really have all these metrics, you know, sussed out, I think, you know, I would guess that you would say something similar, Jacob, that you might be able to really model the whole experience between batter and pitcher.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we don't view, like, especially as a Hawkeye at the MLB level, it's not a competitive system to us. It's more something we can integrate and complement. Like at the basic level, you know, they struggle with acceleration and long rotations. That's a big thing with optical motion capture right now, or specifically markerless. They struggle with rotation and fine movement and acceleration. That's what we measure directly. And it's actually really important for elite performance. So, you know, that would, a combination of a markerless motion capture and inertial sensor is really the best solution, and something that we're excited to explore long term. and then we also have the ability to take what they're measuring and make it in a much more broad application to, hey, now we know what we're looking for. Let's go to the scouting side, to the instant feedback, the training
Places where Hawkeye
application,
isn't yet.
remote training. Yeah, absolutely. All of the things that make us really great can complement the things that they're doing. That's a lot of the focus, and including, some of our integrations, we already do like auto video curation. So, if you're hitting, you can set up a camera, hit play, take 30 swings, and they're all 2-second clips at the end of the day. It's great for the golf driving range. Highly recommend it. But it's already a great way that sensor technology is integrating with cameras to make the whole solution so much easier to use, seamless, and more enriched data in general.
What did I look like when I hit that thing 120?
Yeah, exactly. And bringing the whole picture together, making the connections between my process of my swing and what's actually happening on any pitch, throwing in the pitch and the deception and perception, all of those aspects. And it's cool because we use the same hardware at the pro level all the way down market. They can look at the same stuff in the scouting the players are looking for. And it's certainly a different focus as far as, cost and usability versus camera systems are going to be, a very in-depth and installed situation.
Yeah, Hawkeye's not going to be, in my little league field yet.
Right.
But I really wanted to thank you guys. I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions. I have a question for y'all. Where are the questions? Keenan, you seem to be looking at them at some point. I see a chat here, but I only see you guys.
Yeah, down at the bottom, there's a Q&A tab.
Oh, there's the Q&A tab. Okay, all right. We've got some questions here. Jacob from Glenn Fleisick, we got a question. Jacob, can Blast be attached to bats with asymmetric knobs such as Pro XR, Axe bats, and such? Or if so, does your data need to be adjusted on axes?
Yes. So specifically, we support Axe. I would have to look at the Pro XR to see what that offset angle is. We do support Axe angles. It needs to be oriented, specifically aligned with that angle, so we know it can make that rotation. But we do support that right now, and you can find information on our training center if you're interested in using an axe handle with our sensor.
All right, seems like it can be done. Nicholas Bartle wants to work for you, Keenan.
Call me up.
Yes, there should be a way to contact our hosts. If not, hit me up on Twitter. I'm the easiest. I know where these people live on Twitter, and I can get you to them. Jonah Breeze is asking, Keenan, does your company currently plan to analyze aluminum and hybrid bats for insights into levels below the professional level?
Yeah, if you have any questions about bat choices at that level, definitely reach out to me. Happy to answer any questions that follow up from that, what specifically you're getting at, whether it's what bat should I buy or here are the bats I have at my disposal. I'm happy to help. Just have a call and walk through it because there's so many different options. I was a bat engineer for 6 years at Easton, and so I designed plenty of aluminum and composite and hybrid bats. So I'm happy to just shoot the breeze and figure out what other questions you have beyond that to help you get where you want to go. So hit me up.
Another one for Keenan. Jake was asking, I know the NCAA is testing bats now. Does that have anything to do with your work, or that has maybe more to do with making sure they're compliant?
Yes, there's the testing to certify the prototypes. Yeah, and then there's testing that happens in the actual stadiums with devices that are made that test what's called, it's a compression test where they push down the barrel. I could do an hour on just that. But yeah, those are mostly for compliance. Yeah, it's compliance.
Mark, I think this one is for you, Jacob. It sounds like there are sensors on the equipment in the game. This is a little bit about the data being proprietary. Is it to the team? Is it available to the team in the league? Is that where broadcasters get information? This is mostly on the minor league level. So,
right,
is that going straight to the broadcasters or not, just to the teams?
It goes straight to the team. So all the data that's used by professional organizations goes straight to the teams and disseminated from there.
Yeah. Sam is asking, Seth, if you get a chance, can you talk a little about the kinematics feature? I think you gave that some love. That's good. Garvey, to Eno's point about the translation of data question, what is the best way to integrate coaching, mechanical development, and digesting the data at hand while doing one-on-ones? I think you had a great example of that, Seth.
Yeah, I can take a stab.
Jump in?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us, especially like first time through, we always recommend doing a baseline and have no looking at the numbers at all, right? Just let the kid throw and see what his numbers are. The goal there is not to like train and make improvements and balance. You really just want to understand who he is and how he's doing it. And then you can look at that both from what the numbers say, but then also what you're visibly seeing from his mechanics as well. Odds are, as a coach, you probably have some ideas on his mechanics and some of the flaws and deficiencies, and you're going to see that in the numbers. And that's what we always recommend, is kind of doing that. Then you as a coach kind of regrouping. We mentioned earlier, it's never good to just like data dump everything in front of the kid, but understand what are the key things that need to be pointed out, build out a development plan with that kid, and then you can kind of build a path forward of what that looks like. I think that's kind of a first step.
But it is somewhat important to kind of, you don't want to give them none of it and just do the coaching, because I think especially the younger kids now, they want to know that you know what you're talking about. So if you can say, guys, at the major league level, spin it at this level, and you spinning at this level, we need to, or, we're doing, guys, the major league level, get this vertical break, if you want to get there, you got to work towards that, then they understand that what you're talking about. It's almost marketing in a way. It's sort of
mom and dad want to know about it too, because they're paying a lot of money usually for that. So yeah, in a big way. And it does, it helps you understand like over time, what are your trends looking like and how are you making progress? Because ultimately it's player development, right? It's how are we getting better?
Yeah. Bray is asking, with these technologies, do you suggest for strength coaches or athletic trainers to take the feedback and apply it to player training workouts to improve their performance? How? Yeah. Is that a how? I mean, do you suggest? I would say yes.
Yeah.
Do you find that strength trainers care about your metrics and your data?
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
Jacob, you can go ahead and
yeah.
talk
How's
too.
that?
I think
How have you worked with strength trainers, Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best player development program is going to involve everybody and everybody getting on the same page. And there's a huge strength and conditioning side, whether that's, hey, we need to hit the ball harder. Let's get some bat speed up. Some of our rotational acceleration profile, where we can start to look almost like a force time curve. We can see, are they really good accelerators? Do they have a really good top end? Start to understand more like characteristics of who they are as an athlete. And then even with other metrics, like we look at like rotational acceleration, which kind of gives an indication of how well you start your swing. Being able to create separation between your upper and lower body is a big part of that. And so we can identify characteristics in the swing, have the conversation between the coach and the strength conditioning coach, develop a plan, and then continue to monitor that and track it. And then including if things change over the course of the season, we can address it, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Oh, excellent answer. I'm going to do a little 2-1 here for Keenan. Does the ballpark play a factor in the selection of the bat, and is type of wood standardized? For that one, I would say there's an excellent piece on The Athletic that has a little bit about the wood selection process, including that was amazing. Did you see? I loved talking to the guy about this one little 100-acre spot that they can go get their wood from, and that's the only place where the density is correct. But speak a little bit about the ballparks and the wood.
Yeah, and it is not a naive question to ask about the standardization of a product that has to do with how much money a player makes and their livelihood. So that's a fair question, and it's something that I think we are trying to do. That's what LongBall Labs is trying to do. So wood itself cannot be standardized because it's a raw material that is natural and has tons of variability. So the only real way to standardize baseball bats would be to do non-wood, not wood. So that's never going to happen. What LongBall Labs is doing is trying to provide some standard to help the player kind of recover this performance that's rightfully theirs. And that's like the thing that fuels me every day, is knowing that there are players out there who are getting robbed of performance by their bat. To me, that's unfair. It's 1 versus 9. There's so much going against you as a hitter, and there's so much training and time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears that go into getting the foot down, timing up, picking the right pitch to hit, barreling it up, and then for it not to go out and to get caught at the warning track because of something as innocuous as you grab this bat out of the box instead of that bat, to me it made me angry, honestly, and has fueled the research. So yeah, you can't standardize wood, and that's the inefficiency that we're trying to exploit for our clients.
Here's one for both Jacob and Seth. Allison is a softball player at Mississippi State. They use both BlastMotion and Rapsodo on a daily basis. She was wondering if there's many differences in the data analysis process from the two sport. I guess she's speaking about softball versus baseball there. Are there adjustments for the size of balls and bats, adjustments for the difference in release point? And what did that process look like when you were developing the software and the products?
Go ahead, Jacob. You got it.
Okay, no, I think a big thing that's been really cool to see over the last few years with softball is they're seeing they can hit the ball out of the ballpark, and this home run revolution is coming to the NCAA softball in a big way. It's certainly, one, I think right off the bat, we see a lot of colleges who are matching up Blast and their Rapsodo data, and that's super cool because they can make those connections. The bat ball interaction for softball, it's a little heavier ball, a little bit lighter bat. So that affects that compression or that bounce a little bit. But I think that was a big thing for them, is that they could see, they can really get the ball out of the ballpark on the softball side. Maybe that there was an emphasis to do other things before. And then you can design your swing to make those adjustments to try to create the results you're looking for.
Is the softball? Yeah, I'm just gonna tee it up for you a little bit here, Seth. Is the softball pitching motion? It's so different looking to me.
Yeah.
Does spin rate matter? Like, is ride like a totally different concept? Is is it like designing a machine for Tyler Rogers, or what is it? Are the metrics different? Did you have to have a different sort of suite of softball metrics?
Yeah, we have very similar metrics, but how we get to them, it was a real challenge, if I'm being completely honest. Softball is more difficult. Yeah, it's just more different. We have kind of an area where we expect the ball to come from, and we mentioned before that the ball really creates a trigger for us from the radar. So now the ball is released at a very different point, so that changes things. The ball itself, if you ever looked at like a college softball, has logos all over it. We do machine learning and deep learning to identify the ball, and sometimes those things can look like seams and whatnot. So a lot of back and forth on how to change that up, and then in general, just less ball flight, right? So there's less time for the ball to move. So helping understand, and Josh Johnson, softball coach here at Mississippi State, is kind of like a Rapsodo rock star. He's awesome and helped train a lot of these when he was at Ball State a while back, as we were really developing the product. So a lot of props have to go out to him, and that program does a phenomenal job. But understanding that almost every pitch in softball has a ton of gyro. You can have one girl that throws 5 pitches that all look like sliders to us, and there are no sliders there. It's just, this is a fastball with 80% gyro. This is a curveball with 80% gyro. Yeah, and so how they distinguish that sometimes is location in the strike zone. So they can call a rise ball and it has the exact same spin as a drop ball, but they throw it up in the zone.
No.
So the launching. Oh yeah.
Wow.
It's different. So there is no. Yeah, we have like our baseball movement profile. Yeah. So when we talk about like movement profiles of different pitches for baseball, if I say curveball or slider or fastball, you guys immediately know, okay, this ball moves in this direction.
Yeah.
For softball, it doesn't really work that way. It kind of depends on the pitcher and how she's releasing it. There's kind of generalities, but not as much. So there's a lot of work, that we try to do with coaches, and understanding that it's kind of a case by case, and understand what the desired outcome is for that pitch. And then we'll work backwards and figure out how that ball should maybe be spun a little bit different.
Well, it's been super fascinating. I think we got to most of the questions. I hear my children are about to start a riot upstairs, so I better see why they're banging on stuff. But thank you so much for coming. I had a really great time and learned a lot. And thanks, Scott, for putting this together.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. That was fabulous. And that does conclude our programming for tonight. I want to thank our openers, Brian Kenny and Sarah Langs, our research presenters, Alan Nathan and Hillary Plummer, and our panelists, Sarris, Seth Daniels, Jacob Howenstein, and Keenan Long. Thanks again to Major League Baseball, Rawlings, and Baseball Reference for sponsoring tonight's programming. We will see you tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern for day 2 of the conference. Keep a lookout on your email for new links to attend tomorrow. We'll see you soon.